This is Entertainment for Review, and I'm here to look at another episode of The Big Bang Theory. Today I'm going to be reviewing Season 3, Episode 5, The Creepy Candy Coating Corollary, and I'll get to where we get the origin of that title later in this episode, but with the word creepy in the title, you can probably guess that it has something to do with Howard. Now, this is a very important episode as it introduces a lot of very important things to the show, and we'll get to them one by one. Let's start at the beginning of the show. In the beginning of this episode, Leonard, Howard, Raj, and a reluctant Penny are playing a card game around the coffee table in the apartment. They are playing a game called The Mystic Warlords of Ka, which is a fictional game. It's not real, it's made up for the show, it's probably based on Magic the Gathering. The three guys are having fun, but Penny just seems confused, and that's where Sheldon comes in. He says it doesn't really matter what her next move is, because he knows all the possibilities of the cards that are left in the deck based on what's been played. And this is where we bring a very important point into the show. As Leonard says that Sheldon has a photographic memory, Sheldon corrects him and says that he has an eidetic memory.
Graphic is a misnomer. I have an eidetic memory, as I've told you many times.
Now, this is the first time in the show that we're referencing Sheldon's eidetic memory. And it is an important trait of his character going forward. It basically means that Sheldon doesn't forget anything. He remembers everything that goes on around him. And to build on it, he puts it on display on multiple points in this episode by quoting specific dates and times that things occurred that the others have forgotten, or may not have forgotten, but don't remember as specifically as Sheldon does. Sheldon's interruption does end their game, which Penny is more than fine with, and takes the opportunity to make her exit so she doesn't get caught up in any more games. Leonard takes a moment to note that he's still amazed at times that Penny's in a relationship with him, and everybody else in the room is as well, and we all probably are as well in the audience. However, this is another key point in the episode, as Howard uses this as an opportunity to remind Leonard of a pact they made together, that if one of them ever got a hot girlfriend, that the other one would have that girlfriend introduce the other to one of her friends.
Made a pact that if either of us ever got a hot girlfriend, that person would have his girlfriend hook the other guy up with one of her girlfriends.
Which is a weird sort of pact to make. Leonard says he doesn't remember this, but Sheldon jumps in with that eidetic memory and reminds him of the exact day and time that they made this arrangement, so it looks like Howard wants to cash in. Now, this won't be the last time we hear about this pact throughout the series. Raj wants to know why he wasn't included on this pact, and Sheldon popped in again, letting us know that Raj had gone to the bathroom. So therefore, his weak bladder caused him to miss out on the opportunity of a pact to get a girlfriend, which is kind of a big bummer for Raj. Next, we see Leonard and Sheldon in the cafeteria. Leonard gets something on his hand and asks Sheldon for a napkin, but this is a mistake because Sheldon doesn't have any spares. He only has 4, and he's on a 4-napkin system that does not consist of a guest napkin. What was Leonard thinking? That people just have spare napkins sitting around? Sheldon does offer to have a guest napkin in the future, and in frustration, Leonard just takes a napkin. Howard and Raj come over and join them, and Howard wants to know if Leonard has talked to Penny yet, and Leonard says he hasn't had a chance yet, and that's mostly because he doesn't really want to, because it's an awkward topic and he doesn't know how to bring it up. However, after some pestering from Howard, he does agree that he'll talk to Penny. Now, Raj sets up the next important part of this episode, and he does this by informing Sheldon that there's going to be a tournament at the comic book store for the Mystic Warriors of Ka, and it's a team tournament, and he wants him and Sheldon to enter together. Sheldon says that he doesn't find this game to be a challenge, so he doesn't want to do it, and Raj tries to tell him it's worth money, but he doesn't need the money, so he says no, and it doesn't appear that it's going to go Raj's way. He asks Leonard for help, but Leonard says, I couldn't even convince him to give me a napkin. So next we get to Leonard finally getting around to asking Penny, and he chooses a very awkward moment. He decides to ask Penny about it when they're in bed together. And Penny is not into the idea. She doesn't want to set one of her friends up with Howard. And this is where we get the title of the episode, The Creepy Candy Coating Corollary. And that's because in this part, Leonard tells Penny that she knows that Howard is a good guy at heart. And she says it's not his heart that's the problem, it's the creepy candy coating. Which is pretty undeniable that Howard is a kind of creepy dude. We next see Sheldon at the comic book store looking through some comic books, and we get an appearance by Stuart here, and then we get a very important point. Raj is still trying to get Sheldon to sign up for the tournament, and he brings over the sign-up sheet and he asks Stuart if the Wil Wheaton on the sign-up sheet is the real Wil Wheaton from Star Trek Next Generation, and he confirms that it is. So this episode does have the first appearance of Wil Wheaton, and it's interesting because Wil Wheaton is in the show playing himself, and instantly Sheldon is more interested, because with the introduction of Wil Wheaton, we are also introducing another one of Sheldon's rivals in the show. And this is the first time we hear the backstory of why, that we will hear many times going forward. Sheldon was a big fan of Wil Wheaton's character on Star Trek Next Generation, Wesley Crusher, and that's because Wesley, like Sheldon, had an eidetic memory. Sheldon had an opportunity as a child to take a trip by bus to go to a convention that Wil Wheaton was scheduled to appear at to get his autograph on his mint-in-box Wesley Crusher action figure. And despite being advertised to appear, Wesley no-showed the event, and Sheldon did not get his autograph. And for that reason, Sheldon put Wil Wheaton on his enemies list, which he has remained on to this very day and is currently occupying the number 6 slot. This does the trick for Raj and motivates Sheldon to join him on his team and participate in the tournament for no other reason than to take down Wesley Crusher, aka Wil Wheaton. We see Leonard, Penny, and Howard on the way to the double date, so apparently Penny did decide to try to help. We then pop back to the comic book store for the tournament, and Sheldon and Raj are winning a game. We then get the first on-screen appearance of Wil Wheaton as Sheldon is trying to figure out what he needs to do to face him, and it's basically that Sheldon and Raj need to win their next game, and Wil Wheaton, who is teaming up with Stewart, needs to win their next match, and they'll face each other in the finals of the tournament. We're then back to the car, where they have now picked up the date for Howard. And this is a very important point in the series as well, because this episode introduces Bernadette, which is who Penny sets Howard up with. She is also working currently at the Cheesecake Factory as a waitress, working to put herself through graduate school. Now, this is of course a major point in the show, because although it wouldn't seem so from this point, Bernadette eventually does become a permanent member of the show. Her relationship with Howard continues, and they end up getting married. Now, Bernadette, like many characters on this show, starts out way different than she ends up, and her character goes through a lot of development. This early version of Bernadette is a lot less perky and cheerful than the later version, and just seems a lot more glum and a bit negative. The date seems to be off to an awkward start, and doesn't look to have much hope of getting better. Back at the tournament, Sheldon and Raj win their next match and prepare to go on to the finals with Wil Wheaton. Sheldon mocks Wil Wheaton in Klingon, prompting him to ask Stewart what's wrong with him, and Stewart just says that everybody has their own theory. Back on the date, things don't seem to be going much better. As I said, Bernadette is a lot more negative in this version, or perhaps she's just uncomfortable on a first date. Not even talk of a puppy brings her cheer.
Puppy once bit my face.
However, finally something does happen that her and Howard can relate on, and that's that Howard gets a call from his mother, and he seems distressed. She asks if he gets along with his mother, and they go on to share personal experiences about how they both have basically overbearing mothers. It may not be much, but it's something, and it changes the tone of the date. And Penny even calls herself one heck of a good matchmaker. And to end the episode, we return to the comic book store, where Sheldon and Raj are facing Wil Wheaton and Stewart in the finals of the tournament. It is going in their favor, and they're about to win, when Sheldon decides to tell Wil Wheaton his story. Wil Wheaton then comes up with a fake story, claiming that his grandmother had died on the weekend Sheldon had gone to the Star Trek convention, and so he wasn't able to attend. This makes Sheldon feel bad for Wil Wheaton, and he throws the match. It is here that the dastardly Wil Wheaton admits that his grandmother is still alive, and he lied to win. And he even takes advantage of Sheldon's vulnerability, revealing his nickname of Moon Pie that his grandmother gave him when he tells him, "Game over, Moon Pie."
Game over, Moon Pie.
This is not going to do anything for his position on Sheldon's enemy list, except for perhaps move him up the list. And it does set up Wil Wheaton as quite the villainous character to go through those lengths just to win a card game. This leaves Sheldon dumbfounded, and all he can do is yell Wil Wheaton in the Wrath of Khan style to end the episode. I think this is a very good episode, and the main reason is because this episode does a lot to establish some very important things for the remainder of the series. So let's recap those. First, we build on Sheldon's character by establishing that he has an eidetic memory. This is something that'll come into play in later episodes and just grows his character even more, giving him a new trait. The second major point is the introduction of Wil Wheaton, Sheldon's next main rival and enemy in the show. First we had Leslie Winkle, then we had Barry Kripke, and now Wil Wheaton. And like the others, he's not a constant part of the show. He pops in and out here and there, but it's always fun when he is in an episode. And the third major point is the introduction of Bernadette, who again does eventually become a regular character, appearing in pretty much every episode later in the series, and will marry Howard later on. A rocky start for this character, but because of her overall impact on the series, it is a very major moment, perhaps the biggest major moment of this episode. And it is for these reasons, with the importance of this episode, that I score this episode at a very high 9 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments section. Which one of these 3 major occurrences do you think is the most important in the events of the series? Please be sure to like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out for my next video coming soon.